A lot of times we talk about having to troubleshoot a failed launch, a course that flops, or tech issues that seem to follow us around like a pesky sibling who swears they are not touching us. But what about the times when things are quite literally out of our control? What do we do then to set ourselves apart as course creators committed to our audience and our own well-being? In the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, this has been on my mind a lot. And today we are going to talk about the mindset that we need during the times when we don't have control over what happens. I will say that this episode might be hard to listen to. I am going to try my best to keep it focused on mindset and the actions that we can take, but I will talk a little bit about the aftermath of Hurricane Helene and how our family handled the situation to not only serve clients, but also to maintain our well-being. I know that this is a difficult topic, and it might not be for you, at least right now. If you are looking for mindset episodes that do not reference hurricanes or natural disasters, check out episodes 192, episode 166 with guest Kelly Rissy, and episode 152. If you are ready to listen to this episode, let's go ahead and get started.
Anyone can add a digital course to their business. So what sets the six-figure course creators apart? You're about to find out. Welcome to the Digital Course Creator Podcast with Dr. Moira, a longtime entrepreneur now using her PhD in psychology to help you go from sticky notes to sales worth celebrating.
Every Tuesday morning at 4 a.m. Eastern Time, I release a new podcast episode. I have been doing this since February 2nd, 2021. Without fail, every single Tuesday, an episode has been released. I have recorded when I haven't felt the best, after the passing of my grandmother, and during times when I was so energized that I recorded 4 or 5 episodes in a single day. On Wednesday, September 25th, at 5 p.m., I sat down to a podcast interview with my friend and colleague, Tracy Beavers. I was so excited to have her back on the podcast and for her to share her insights with you all. I was excited for you because she's such a wealth of knowledge and wisdom and action. But I was also personally excited because Tracy and I just have a lovely time whenever we get together. We talk about the goofiness in our lives and the hard stuff that we're going through. You can imagine that I was really pretty jazzed about being able to release this interview on October 1st. So after that interview, I immediately started getting the audio pulled together. I uploaded everything to Descript where I edit things, and I walked away from my computer because I usually get my episodes ready on Saturday or Sunday. This was Wednesday, so I had plenty of time. And I knew that I would take that time on Saturday or Sunday to finish the editing and to plan the graphics that Tracy could share, that I could share to let you all know about this episode. Then, on Friday morning, Hurricane Helene rolled through our area. We lost power at 5:15 a.m. and we started listening to tree after tree fall. We listened to transformers pop. We listened to the sirens. The furthest thing from my mind was getting that episode ready. At that point, the only thing we could control was trying to stay safe and calm. After all, we have a kiddo in the house. We have 2 animals in the house. And as the adults, my husband and I had to stay calm and keep everyone safe. We were so lucky that the damage was minimal to our property and to the property of our neighbors as well. We all came together and we shared resources. But the last thing on anyone's mind at that point was work and business. We had no power. We had no internet. And we watched as our friends and family had their lives turned upside down in our own community and in Western North Carolina. At that moment, nothing else mattered. Not getting the podcast up, not creating graphics that Tracy and I could share, not trying to rig some magical way to host my client calls. In that moment, in those days, what we could control was working with our neighbors, coming together as a community, and being patient. Now, I promised you an episode on what to do when things are quite literally out of your control. We had no control over the impact that Helene would bring. So when you're in these situations, not just natural disasters, how do you safeguard your business as well as your well-being? You take time. You reschedule client work. You do the bare minimum. I still got that podcast episode up because thank goodness I had already uploaded it from my computer to Descript, so I was able to use my hotspot, which thankfully was working. Many of us did not have cell service in our area and still don't a week later. But I was able to hotspot, get my podcast episode up, but I didn't share it with my email subscribers. I didn't send it out to my social media following. And I haven't created those graphics yet. We have power now, but we still have no internet 9 days later. And we are lucky. The reason that my clients were willing to reschedule is because first, I have amazing clients. But second, I spend a lot of time getting to know my clients and genuinely care about them. As a course creator, I want you to think about how you can take time to get to know your students, get to know your clients, know what they're worried about, learn how you can best support them. Because when you do this, you are creating genuine relationships, not transactions. It is these kinds of relationships that carry you through the times when you don't have any control over what's happening. On a whole, people are really understanding. We hear a lot of horror stories, of course, but in the end, people are really understanding. We tend to worry about what people will think when we need to reschedule because of something out of our control. You can do everything right. Here's the thing that I'm going to say. You can do everything right, and something can still happen that's out of your control. You can still come down with the nasty case of the flu. Sometimes you just have to say, I'm so sorry. Can we reschedule? I have a client who reaches out when they need a meeting, and I typically make space in my schedule so that we can sit down and talk ASAP. This time, I have to let them know that I don't have internet, and my hotspot, it's not that great. I hate doing this, but honestly, I don't have a lot of choices right now. We still have a lot of people in our area without power, trees across streets, let alone starting to worry about internet, right? I would much rather the linemen focus on getting power to our homes than getting power to the internet nodes that drive our home and business internet connections. So this time I have to tell my client, I want to meet, but it's going to take me some time. If you are thinking about how to safeguard your business when things happen that are out of your control, the best way to do this is to be proactive and build relationships. When we have strong relationships, we have so much more flexibility, we have more support, and we have that peace of mind that it will be okay, even if it isn't right now. But safeguarding our business isn't enough. We also have to safeguard our well-being during these times. When things happen, like a natural disaster, the ramifications, they extend so far beyond the loss of a fence, the power outages that last weeks, the tree that crashes through a roof into someone's bedroom. When these things happen that are outside of our control, it is exhausting, both physically and mentally. So you have to think about, how can I protect myself and maintain my well-being during these moments? I don't have all the answers for you, but I can tell you some things that we have done that have helped. First up, get the news, get the updates, and then find a way to help. Because if we wallow in the updates, especially when we're talking about catastrophes, it is heavy. And I'm not saying to ignore it. I'm saying to find a way to help. Talk with a neighbor that you don't usually get to stop and talk to. Don't be afraid to ask for help. We were prepared before the storm came. We had done our laundry, we had charged every device in our home and the portable batteries that charge our devices when we don't have a power source available. We had plenty of batteries and water. We tend to be pretty independent in our family. However, there were a few neighbors with generators, and we asked for some help. We were trying to clean up storm debris and needed to charge the chainsaw battery. We didn't put that on our pre-storm prep list. Oops. We needed to charge the pool vacuum battery to try and get all the junk that fell out of the trees off the bottom of the pool so that the water would not turn a disgusting green. So we asked for help. We shared resources with our neighbors, and they shared with us. My point here is to be of service as well as ask for help. That connection that you experience when you're able to help releases neurotransmitters that help you to feel better. When we help others, we get that dopamine hit, the same thing that makes you feel good when you're scrolling through social media that has us going back for more. It's that same thing, except we're helping people. So I want you to think about it from the flip side of the coin. When we ask for help, even if it feels hard, we're independent, we are offering that same amazing dopamine hit to the person that we're asking for help because they get to do something good and feel good about themselves and experience that lift. Another thing that we did during the power outage and the storm was to relax some of the rules that we have. From making sure to have a balanced meal and snacks to having a regular bedtime. You might think that this creates more havoc, but in reality for us, it created flexibility without any feelings of anxiety or worry. We just kind of went with the flow. We played games, we got outside after the storm passed, and we were more forgiving of ourselves. Finally, recognize when you've hit the wall, so to speak, and just rest. We don't have internet, but that doesn't mean that my husband doesn't have to work. He is a full-time remote worker and has been for years. His teams are located throughout the country, and business was on a normal schedule for them. And that meant he needed to work. So he used our hotspot to work for about 4 hours a day, and then he'd stop and unplug. He let people know he couldn't do any more for the day. And we are very lucky that his coworkers are understanding. A few even told him to leave the meeting and just take care of himself and family because they knew how hard it was. Sometimes we just have to rest. This is particularly important as course creators because our courses, our workshops, they're available 24/7 in the digital space. And students' requests, their concerns, their complaints, they don't just stop because our family member is sick, a natural disaster strikes, or we're on vacation trying to refill our energy banks. Without our well-being, we cannot serve. We cannot build those relationships with our students and our clients in a way that is meaningful and impactful. All of this leads me to our action item for today. It's something that I honestly hadn't given a lot of thought to prior to Hurricane Helene this past week. It's kind of always been in the back of my mind, but this really made me stop and think. If you've been around the podcast for any length of time, you know that I'm big on action, right? I want you to do something with what I've shared today, what I've talked about. And so just like we always have a plan to make sure things are charged and the laundry's done when severe weather is a possibility in our house, I want you to have a plan in place for your business and your well-being for when things happen that are outside of your control. For instance, you might decide what tasks in your business still need to happen if possible, and which ones can be tackled once the crisis or the thing passes. With your well-being, it might mean making a list of what typically helps you restore your energy. Is it taking time for meditation? Is it getting out there and serving your community? Is it keeping a steady bedtime, no matter what is happening, or relaxing that bedtime? For people who live in a hurricane zone, they often have lists of things that they take when they evacuate. They pack up their important papers, their medications. They've got a packing list for clothing, for kids' toys, all the things, right? They have a list of the things that they do to prep their home for the storm. Make sure the trash is out. Make sure things are lifted to higher surfaces. Some folks might even move items out of their house into a storage unit that is outside of a flood zone. I want you to think about your business and your well-being in this way. I want you to have a similar list for your business and for your well-being for when these times happen, not necessarily natural disaster related, where nothing is really in your control or something big is outside of your control. This is your action item for the week. I want you to come up with a plan. And if you are thinking that even the thought of creating this kind of plan makes you a little panicky or a little queasy, let's talk about the one thing that every single person can do right now. In today's 60-second solution, I'm going to share with you my top tip for managing that anxiety that happens when we think about the unknown or try to plan for the unknown. Now, sometimes these 60-second solutions, they take you 60 seconds to implement, and sometimes it is more along the lines of it takes me 60 seconds to explain. I think both apply to this solution if I stay focused for you guys. When the worry starts to pop up when you're planning for the events that happen that are completely outside of your control, this is one thing that you can do to change your body's reaction and help your thinking brain get back into the driver's seat. Take a deep breath and release it slowly. Do that over and over. If you want to get fancy, you can do what's called box breathing, where you breathe in for 3 seconds, hold for 3 seconds, release for 3 seconds, then hold for 3 seconds before beginning your next box of breathing. So you can kind of imagine going up, over, down, across. This process allows you to reset, create a deep focus on your breath, and it steadies your heart and your mind. I hope that this episode and today's 60-second solution has been helpful to you, especially if you struggle with guilt over not getting things done when something happens that is outside of your control. I know that it can be difficult to release things that feel important when the unthinkable happens. Now, if you find that as we head into the last few months of the year, or really any time, depending on when you're listening to this, that your passion, that your purpose is waning a little bit, maybe you're tired. Maybe things have happened this year. A lot of things have happened this year that have been outside of your control, and you are hitting the proverbial wall. I want you to listen to some really early episodes of this podcast. In fact, the podcast had a different name at this point, where I talked about passion and purpose, and I interviewed best-selling author Amy McLaren. These episodes are quite different from the ones that you're listening to right now because the show has evolved over the years, but I still think you'll find some great nuggets of information in episodes 27 through 31. That's it for this week's episode. I'd love to hear your list of non-negotiables, your plan as you think about what could be put on the back burner if something unthinkable happens, and what actually still has to happen if things are out of your control. Send me a DM on Instagram or on Facebook at Digital Course Creator Guide. Until next time, happy creating.